the University of Tennessee. The long-awaited first major league at bat. First pitch swinging, Aaron Sevilla, left field, back to the wall, and gone! Home run, JP Aaron Sevilla! First major league at bat, first major league hit, and it's a home run for Aaron Sevilla.
First major league pitch? Holy moly!
How about it? He had 31 of them in AAA Las Vegas. Add another to the total. The first Blue Jay to do that as mother Irene Aaron Sevilla on her feet. And why wouldn't you be?
Not everybody blasts their way onto the scene like JPR and Sevilla, but today on Crafting the Call, we're talking major league debuts. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts.
And I'm Josh Suchon with the Albuquerque Isotopes. I feel like we need to channel our inner Eminem. You only get one shot. You only get one shot to make a memorable debut as a player. And you only get one shot, Jesse, as a broadcaster to make sure that you capture that major league debut perfectly.
Sometimes you do get that chance to read that player's resume to say, he had 31 homers in AAA. Let's see what he does here, or he's living up to it. Sometimes you don't know a lot about that player. And so as you're watching, you're getting to know more and more. But there's such a great feeling of anticipation. There's that feeling of the mystery. There's such a great feeling whenever a new player makes that debut. And this is at the major league level. We're going to watch major league debuts, but I want to ask you, every time a new player joins your team, do you have that feeling of excitement of, all right, let's see what this guy's got?
Absolutely, 100%. And I try to treat a AAA debut, even if it's a Rockies organization debut, as if it's a Major League Baseball debut. I want to make sure that everybody knows this is his first game. This is his first at bat, or even this is his first week at AAA. This is his first time pitching in the Pacific Coast League with all of the challenges that are involved, or this is his first time pitching at Isotopes Park, 5,200 feet altitude, the hardest place in professional baseball to pitch. I always want to set the scene and get people understanding he's never done this before until now.
Yeah, the teammates don't know them. The coaching staff doesn't know them. The fans especially don't know them. And so if you get that chance to meet the player before that game, to just say hello, and then you can say to the fans, hey, let me introduce this player to you. Let's talk about who they are. And now let's see how things go. And we're going to be watching some smashes of debuts.
Yeah. The other thing I want to hit on before we start watching some memorable debuts, Jesse, is that we've kind of reached this point in baseball, and I love the way that teams are doing this. We're going to hide a camera when someone gets told that they're going to the major leagues, right? And we're going to have these pictures and these celebrations of what it was like when somebody calls their parent and says, I'm going to the major leagues for the first time. And, you know, we get these images posted on social media as they walk in, or as they say hello, as they get handed their jersey. Like, all of these different things get documented. And all of that is great. But still, it's all about what happens on the field. And sometimes it's about what happens in the stands with their parents. Are they crying? There's been these emotional debuts where fathers just cannot contain the tears just rolling down their eyes. And it becomes such just a fabulous television moment. And then the challenge for the announcers, Jesse, is what to say and when to just be quiet and let the pictures tell that story.
So let's see how announcers have handled that challenge over the years.
There's the young right-hander, Dwight Gooden. Last year,
he did it all.
He sure did. 19-4 at Lynchburg, 300 strikeouts. Won a couple of games at Tidewater, I believe, didn't he?
He won one game he won one and lost one in the playoffs, and then won another one in the Little World Series. So that's 21 victories in the minors last year.
The Astros line up the same as last night. And Bill Doran set to lead off against Gooden. Gooden, whose parents are here watching. Doran takes a ball.
Here's a fellow, as Doran steps in, Jim, that's 19 years old plus, and what we're talking about the last inning was how many pitches does he have? He obviously, by looking at his stats, throws hard. He's up in the 90s, I assume, and probably doesn't use a whole lot besides that at this stage.
You know, he's going to go through this whole baseball season. There's a tap on the right side. Doran may have broken the bat. And Gardenhire throws him out. He will go through this season 19. He will not turn 20 until November. He's a young 19.
19, 4 months, and 22 days. I was trying to figure out what Nolan Ryan was when he first pitched for the Mets. Nolan was 19 years old, but he didn't come up, I don't think, till later in the season, so he's older than this young man.
Terry Poole, the batter, 1 for 4 last night. The Mets have had a few 19-year-olds, haven't they, or teenagers play for them.
I think they've had about 5. I think that there have been 2 pitchers. I think the note said that there have been 2 pitchers younger than Gooden is to start for the Mets, or to pitch for the Mets.
Kendo was an everyday player last year at 19. There's a strike. 0-2 to Poole. And, of course, Crane Poole is the one that first comes to mind, the first one they had.
I always remember Crane Poole. I always associate Ed with Rusty. They came up about the same time, both as, I think, 18, 19-year-olds.
2 strikes on Poole.
Rusty's longevity a little more than Crane Poole's.
Yeah. Misses inside, ball 1, strike 2.
Gooden pitched at Lynchburg last night. That was an A-League, and he led the Carolina League. He had 6 shutouts in that league last year and was pitcher of the year for the Carolina League.
Poole takes that one, and it misses outside, 2-2. At one time last year, he won 15 in a row.
Well, his record last year was what, 19 and what?
4, I believe, at Lynchburg.
I guess if that's your record, you're going to win some in a row, aren't you? With only 4 losses. Well, that sounded just like the first one.
It sure did. And the same result as Gardenhire throws out Poole.
You know, that's another interesting thing. Both of the balls, I think that, like you mentioned, that Dorn broke his bat on.
All right, so I'm going to pause it here because let's keep in mind, this is Dwight Gooden's debut. This is the Houston Astros television broadcast. This is 1984. In 1984, Baseball America did not exist. All of these websites that tell us all of these things about prospects do not exist. It was really hard to have information back then. But at the same time, how many times did these announcers just say, I think?
I think the notes said that. They don't even have the notes in front of them to directly consult. No idea what he throws. I assume he throws hard. I assume that's probably the only pitch that he has.
Once again, this goes to show like how much baseball has changed. Like we have information about these guys that exist now that we didn't. But even back then, there was media guides. There was notes. What round was he drafted? What overall selection was he? Where is he originally from? There's so many things that could be done better to capture. Look, it's not like Dwight Gooden was an unknown. He was the best prospect in baseball when he was making his debut. And every other sentence is, I think.
Let me add 2 things. He was the 5th overall pick in the draft. He was taken out of high school. He strikes out 300 batters in 191 innings in A-ball. So before setting aside the broadcasters, can you imagine, number 1, a teenager throwing that many innings? And you can imagine his pitch count. Number 2, I don't know how often you've seen this, but if we have a player who dominates 1 outing, let alone 2 or 3, every single person goes, okay, they should be called up. Not the entire season.
Yeah, nowadays he'd go to AA. Maybe he'd go straight from AA to the big leagues, but he'd go to AAA. Yes. So, all right, we're going to continue on with this. But to me, it's just fascinating that it's like, this guy, Dwight Gooden. Do you have the notes? What was that? Do you remember that guy? Do you remember that guy's name? I don't remember that guy's name.
Wait, let me make one more point.
Okay.
This is the 4th game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
He's in their starting rotation to open up the season. Spring training has been a success. You can talk to anyone on the Mets, and this is a highly anticipated start. All you've got to do is have a conversation, say, hey, this kid is going to be going this day. We're really excited about him. No conversations were had.
All right, let's continue.
On the one that he hit, and the one that Poole just hit there, a very hard sound. And usually we call it, he throws a very hard pitch. That is, it's usually a fastball that sinks. And you get that kind of a sound out of a bat when it's hit to the infield, and a good fastball that comes down.
Dickie Thon off to a good start this year. Hitting over 400, takes a strike. Was 1 for 4 last night.
That curveball was ridiculous, by the way.
All 4 hits for the Astros came in the first. They're the parents. They came over from Florida to watch Dwight Gooden in his big league debut. On the foul tip, it's 0-2. First 4 batters in the Astro lineup had all the hits last night.
He has pitched in 38 minor league games, has won 24 and lost 9. Kind of interesting to look at his stats, Jim. A 2.57 ERA in the minors, and he struck out 344 batters in 270 innings.
Oh. Gets his first strikeout here. The Astros down in order in the first. Dwight Gooden, impressive. Couple of ground balls on the right side, and then he strikes out Dickie Thon. So we've played an inning, and we have no score. The Astros and the Mets.
So I want to make an important point here, and that is that the broadcasters need to see for themselves if this guy is any good. And we're going to see some anticipated debuts where it's clear the broadcasters have read the resume and done their homework. But for me specifically, I just saw Max Clark. And I saw Max Clark's first high A ball game. I got to call his first high A home run. Number 3 overall pick in the draft last year, top high schooler in the country. And yet I still want to say, does he impress me? And that goes for everyone. In the Midwest League, Travis Bazzana is in. Jack Caglione is in. And I know what those guys did in college, but I need to see for myself. I do think that there is that thing for the broadcaster where you go, I know what I've read about him. I know what I've heard about him. Let's see for myself. And then our amazement, then we get to share that with the audience.
Do you ever say that on the air? In terms of, we've read about him, or even using, I've read about him, but now it's our first chance to see him with our own eyes and maybe even paint the picture of his teammates have no doubt read about him. The opponents have no doubt read about him in college and in high school. And now we all get to see for ourselves what he's really like in person.
Yes, it is that shared experience. I've heard of the curve. Let's see. There's the curve. It looked pretty good. Whatever it might be. With Max Clark, we were waiting for the power. There's the power. It's fun to share that experience with everyone taking it in with you.
I also really like it, too, when the cameras can really zoom in and you can really start to see, is the heart, what's the heartbeat doing? Is he wiping more perspiration, right, than a normal player might? And just really starting to get into, again, whether it's your first varsity game of high school, whether it's college, whether it's pro ball, no matter what the level is, whether it's the major leagues, every time you take a step up, it matters. It's significant. It's a first. And there's probably adrenaline and nerves. And I think it's just really fun to watch that, observe that, and then try to find the right words to capture that moment.
It changes the way that we perceive the game. We're going pitch by pitch with Gooden here. Forget that it's Terry Poole. Okay, it's Dickie Thon. It doesn't matter. What matters is each pitch coming in and how we're enjoying that and we're experiencing that.
Okay, so when it comes to top pitching prospects, Dwight Gooden, 1984, was the top prospect, even though we didn't have Baseball America and these websites. But by the year 2010, we did have all of these things. And we all knew about Stephen Strasburg, right? Because he was a sophomore on Team USA in the 2008 Olympics. Then he went back for one more year at my beloved San Diego State, utterly dominated college baseball. He was the number 1 overall selection. And it was just a matter of how many starts will the Nationals give him in the minor leagues before he comes up to the major leagues. So he makes his major league debut. Of course, it's at home, should be at home. It's a capacity crowd. MLB Network broadcasted this game live. It's Bob Costas, it's John Smoltz, and it's Jim Cott. And I want to skip ahead to the final inning because we looked at the start of Dwight Gooden's first inning. Now let's get into how the announcers captured the final inning from Stephen Strasburg's major league debut.
And the other thing that might make Jim Riggleman's decision a little easier, as Strasburg got the helmet on, comes in the batting circle, but they'd probably say, if this guy gets on, I'm going to pinch hit for you.
That would make the decision not only easier, but a whole lot easier, I think, for some of the fans to take.
Yeah.
That might make sense even to those watching more with their hearts than with their heads. Jammed him. Walker, tough chance from the outfield grass. Nice play. So Meek comes in and settles things down from the Pirate perspective, retiring all 3 hitters he faces. And we will wait with the rest of you to see if Strasburg comes out for the 7th.
I think that's a great
there's an
tease.
investment here, and you have to be ultra cautious. But it's also theater, especially tonight. He's thrown 81 pitches. The projected limit was 90. Riggleman and McCaddy would at least let him face one man, maybe more, here in the 7th. The first man is Garrett Jones. The guy on deck, Delwyn Young, reached him for a homer in the 4th.
2 hitters. That's the signal. And in watching some of Stevens' highlights, I don't know if you can think back and find any pitcher that has put away hitters with 4 different pitches. He struck guys out with his 2-seam sinker, his high-riding fastball, his change, and his curve. In his debut, very impressive.
Well, no pun intended, but they're hoping that this guy will give this organization a shot in the arm and carry-over effect to everybody who follows him and the people who come and watch the Nationals. There's some excitement in the air.
If, and it may seem far-fetched, they're in the basement, 6 back right now. If the Nationals somehow got on the race and it was late September and Strasburg had reached his innings limit, we asked Jim Riggleman what they would do. He said we would probably shut him down. Almost hit him, spins him away, 2-2. On the other hand, he also said, well, if we could look that far down the road, we might be able to skip a start. We might be able to pull him early in a game where we have a lead and save some of those innings for later. If we're in the race. The 2-2. Still throwing 98 here in the 7th.
I just think it's a defeated mindset to think that you know how many innings a pitcher should have or how many innings he's going to need before his arm injury or this or that. And I just think you let the pitcher and his mechanics and his body tell you where he's at, more or less, than dictating what it should be.
On the breaking ball, Jones goes down swinging, and that is 12.
Let me play it forward a little bit more.
5 in a row. And
okay, let's pause it right there, Jesse, because I want to get your initial thoughts so far on what we've heard and seen.
I recoiled a little bit at Bob Costas's use of the word theater, just because I'm so used to this being, it's an athletic competition. But I understand what he's getting at. And you see all the cameras, you see everyone taking it in, that this is an experience that has set it beyond the normal baseball game. And there's Jim Kaat breaking it down. This is baseball analysis. Look at him. Here's how he's getting guys out. Look at all these different pitches. There's John Smoltz looking at it from the larger perspective of what will this do for the Washington Nationals franchise? And then there's Costas coming back to the real big story of the day. This was a gigantic controversy that the Nats were saying, we will shut him down at the innings limit. Regardless of what happens, regardless of where we were, this was huge at the time. And then for years afterward, people were still looking back at it and going, this is a massive mistake. The Nats have set back the franchise and Strasburg for years to come. I remember this being the source of a lot of arguments and the Nats being at the center of a maelstrom. So I found that fascinating, that it really was theater in a sense, that Jim Kaat tried to talk about the baseball aspect of it. And yet it was really clear that this was about so much more than baseball.
Love your analysis. A couple of things come to mind as a Gen X kid who's like, oh, baseball was so great in the 80s. Okay, it was, but just the way that baseball is presented, you think about it's April, it's in the Astrodome, there's no atmosphere whatsoever for Dwight Gooden's debut. And now we skip ahead to 2010. And we're in Washington, D.C. It's outdoors. It's sold out. It's electric. You can hear the cameras clicking in the background as he delivers all of his pitches. It's just so much more energy and just what an overall better presentation there is for baseball. That's my first thought. My second thought, when it comes to Strasburg, I had to remind myself about the chronology of this. Okay, so this is 2010. This is his debut. and they were going to limit his innings if they got to the postseason. They did not. Then the next year, he got hurt anyways. He still blew out his elbow. And then it was 2012 when they were getting close to the playoffs when they decided to shut him down. So all of these conversations were taking place for years and years. And I almost feel bad for Strasburg that he almost became the poster child of how do we handle young pitchers? What is the right number of pitches, innings, whatever, in order to make sure that they don't get hurt? Oh, by the way, he got hurt anyways. And this goes to show, again, these are the conversations that you almost have to have as broadcasters in terms of what's too much tonight, what's too much his next start, what's too much this year and next year and all the years that follow.
I'm going to make a comparison to Caitlin Clark here, because Clark, like Strasburg, exceptional, talented competitor who beyond that you say, okay, what's the personality of this person? I don't know. They're really good at this sport. You would never look at Stephen Strasburg and say that there was other personalities developed other than he's a really quiet, great guy who's a tremendous competitor as a pitcher who's ridiculously talented. And Caitlin Clark, big time competitor, tremendously talented. And then through them, all sorts of other conversations get channeled.
All right, so let's get back to this debut of Stephen Strasburg in the 7th inning.
6 of the last 7.
And that looks like
Another
we
knee
talked about,
buckling
yeah.
curveball.
That's that Kerry Wood type breaking ball that helped strike out 20 predominantly right-handed Houston Astros hitters.
I'll tell you, it's amusing, and yet it's kind of sad to look down in the dugout. And the big decision here is pitches and when to take them out. And the guy could probably pitch 9 and shut down the rest of the game.
A fastball at the knees for a strike to Young, who solved Strasburg for a home run in the 4th. Went down and got a breaking ball, hit it out to right field. Can't catch up with that one, 0-2.
We're in the 7th inning. It's his first major league start. His velocity has maintained this the entire time.
That was the 90th pitch. The 91st is his 13th strikeout. Now, 91 pitches,
Boy,
and Riggleman has to decide, do we let him finish the inning?
Man. I don't want to be him going out there to take him out.
He's doing the right thing. I applaud him. Struck out, 6 in a row?
Yep. And 7 of 8. How do you like that one, Mr. LaRoche? Did your dad, Dave, ever throw one like that in his big league career?
Actually, his dad had a pretty good hook.
But not to go with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So that's the thing. Justin Verlander, who's terrific, was throwing 100 miles an hour the other night in the 7th inning himself. Blazing speed is tremendous. But when you mix it with this repertoire and command of all those pitches, that's what's close to unique here. And the 0-2. He strikes out the side for the 2nd straight inning. He brings his total to 14. We started the night saying, hey, it's just one game. Keep it all in perspective. It is difficult to restrain yourself. Unleash all the superlatives. They all seem to apply. Stephen Strasburg.
Okay, I'm going to commit broadcasting sacrilegious here, because there's one thing that Bob Costas did there that I really wish he would not have done. And Costas is one of my idols, but he mentions LaRoche and his dad, and Jim Cott says he has a great hook. And then Bob kind of just launches into this, all the repertoire of all the pitches and Justin Verlander, and the crowd's going nuts. And I'm thinking to myself, lay out. Just let's see all the fans rising to their feet. Let's just feel all the energy. Now, he punctuates the strikeout. He takes us to break, I think, in a really effective way. But I think there's certain moments when it's just.
I think Bob has the heart of a columnist.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this felt like to me, was he was writing the column about the game as it was going on, comparing it to past, present, and future, and saying, here's what I was anticipating. It has overwhelmed that. And let's go back to the start. As a broadcaster, you're going, all right, show me what you got. And there's Bob going, we're televising this. I'm here. Jim's here. John's here. It's on MLB Network. All right, let's see. And by the end there, it has overwhelmed him, and he's just trying to talk his way through it.
It's probably the most highly anticipated debut, which not only lived up to the hype, but exceeded the hype, I think, in baseball history. And I think that just as two huge baseball fans, we could go back and forth for hours about how many pitches and how many innings and all that kind of stuff. But again, this is crafting the call. And so we want to focus on this from a broadcasting standpoint. And I'm not usually a big fan of the 3-person booth, but I think that this worked with Costas and Jim Cott and with John Smoltz, adding different perspectives. And I think they did an excellent job of the different storylines and making sure to hit on the right things to say. I love that one. I think it was Jim Cott who said, I would not want to be Jim Riggleman right now. And then I think it's John Smoltz who says he's doing the right thing.
That's the story of this inning as told by the director. The camera shots are not lingering on Stephen Strasburg's family. They're lingering on the manager and pitching coach. They're lingering on Riggleman and McCaddy side by side, looking out there with their strained expressions and going, all right, prove us right. You can feel their stress. It's palpable.
At one point, Kerry Wood's name was mentioned. And I'm glad that Kerry Wood's name got mentioned. It might have been mentioned a few other times in the other 6 innings that we did not watch, because I feel like the combination of Kerry Wood and Mark Prior really kind of set the tone for, look, these are incredible prospects. There's all this hype. Look at the dramatic impact they've had. They're dominating the sport. Oh, and then they got hurt. And ever since those two got hurt so early in what was a dominant early start to their career, it's changed the narrative of how pitchers get developed. And I think that I like comparing. You know, you think about these memorable debuts, Gooden. You think about Mark Prior. We're going to have a few others that we're going to look at as well. And I think that's part of, like, I know that as a writer, I always like looking back on, what did Tim Hudson do in his major league debut? What did Barry Zito do in his major league debut? What did Mark Mulder do? Let me go back to Catfish Hunter. Let me go back to Vida Blue. Let me go back to some of these other pitchers in Oakland A's history to kind of get a sense of what they did, how many innings they went, how many pitches they threw, the level of dominance, what was the size of the crowd, to try to kind of just like paint the historical picture here.
Paul Skeens, 84 pitches and 4 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts against the Cubs earlier this year on a Saturday afternoon. That was the most recent, to my mind, anticipated major league debut by a starter. I want to go back, though, because you mentioned Prior and Wood. Prior's nickname was the can't miss kid. Doc Gooden had arm injuries. And then throughout the 1980s, Valenzuela went down. Viola came up with the Twins, a sensation. Saberhagen came up with the Royals, a sensation. You can look at so many aces who came up in the 80s, and really only Roger Clemens was the pitcher who had that lasting power, who stayed great throughout his career. The 1980s was bereft of long-term pitching talent, which was one of the reasons why Jack Morris ended up in Cooperstown.
All right, so let's get to another memorable debut that may not be someone who was a number 1 overall pick, but someone who had a debut that we will never, ever forget.
Yeah.
And Jason Jennings, Gary was talking about him, his first major league start. Must be that was a good one, too.
And gets him.
Hey, that's, you know, back it up. If you got one that works, back it up. Throw it again.
Got him. Breaking ball down and away. So 2 strikeouts, both in this inning for the rookie Jennings. 23 losses over 3 years. And that's a gunner. 1-2 delivery. Piazza, strike 3 on the outside corner. And that was a good pitch from Jason Jennings. He dropped that one in there.
Which that would be bigger than the slider. That's changeup right there. Look at his grip. Yeah, he gets into a little slider. That's the slider.
They moved up to 3 tonight. There, and that's why that pitch right there. Mets just cannot catch up with that breaking ball. He has 6 strikeouts in his major league debut.
The shutout?
I think he will.
All right. You keep pitching like that. And nasty breaking ball he's got here. I got a couple of knocks. I got an RBI. Oh, by the way, I pitched 4 in shutout. About 7 punch-outs. Walked a couple.
And he drills it to right field. Way back at the wall. Oh, my, goodbye home run. Do you believe this? Jason Jennings in his major league debut. His first hit, his first RBI, his first home run, and maybe a complete game shutout.
Look at this. Fastball first pitch. Bingo. No wonder he was a DH.
It's about as hard as he's thrown. 8 strikeouts, 1 down. 7 complete games over a 3-year period at all the different levels in the minors. Grounded to second base. He's got to get over to cover. They go to second and get the out. How about that? Jason Jennings' major league debut is a 5-hit shutout of the Mets with 2 RBIs, a homer, his first base hit. Can there be any more?
Not really. There really can't be much more in a debut, and that's Gary Thorne on play-by-play there. And to me, this is the ultimate in the visiting team's broadcaster who knows a little. They've done their homework, and they're just in awe. And as this game goes on, what we discussed earlier, Jesse, about let me see it. I am now seeing it. I am a believer. Jason Jennings was a prospect, but he was not an enormous prospect. But what a debut for the Rockies right-hander.
Yeah, I wanted us to watch this as a direct parallel to Doc Gooden. That's a Mets prospect, and we get the Astros team. Here's the Rockies prospect. We get the Mets team. Jason Jennings, a first-rounder, 16th overall pick out of Baylor. And like Doc Gooden is going to be, Gooden's the Rookie of the Year. Well, Jason Jennings debuts in 2001, 2002. He's the National League Rookie of the Year. They start, once again, they're not quite sure about his pitches. I like Gary being like, well, that's a good pitch. That's the changeup. They look at the replay. No, that's the slider. And it's so fun. The opposing broadcast crew going, all right, let's see what else he's got. And the rising excitement for Gary as the game is going on.
Even during the home run, you can hear the Mets fans cheering. And that's one of my favorite moments in sports, especially in baseball. It's just, okay, you play for the other team, but well done. You know, like we're just baseball fans, and well done. Like we just have to acknowledge that you're awesome right now.
We are. And the fun thing is, hey, look at this. He's going to throw a 9-inning complete game. He had 3 hits. He knocks in 2 runs. He's got a home run. How about this? But it does feel like it emerged out of nowhere, which is opposite from Stephen Strasburg, where everyone has shown up at the ballpark to watch Stras-mas. Jason Jennings, surprise, surprise, you watched the birth of the Rockies' next hopeful sensation.
Well, speaking of coming from nowhere, that leads us to our next clip, which is the ultimate example of someone coming from nowhere.
Our man is up and throwing in the Devil Ray bullpen. It's Big Jim. Jim Morris wearing number 63. Just called up today, the 35-year-old high school baseball coach.
And I think he's coming. It is number 63, Jim Morris, walking through the gate. And how about this story? A high school physics teacher just 4 months ago. He's about to make his major league debut at the age of 35. From Brownwood, Texas, Jim Morris trotting into the mound.
Jim Morris making his major league debut.
Well, I hope Doug Gassaway is watching, the scout that signed him, because he deserves all the credit for this one. And, of course, I guess Jim Morris deserves most of the credit. He's the one that's accomplished this amazing feat. And it's a great baseball story. I think fans love this story. His teammates, I'm sure, love watching it. And I doubt that there's anyone in the country that's not rooting for Jim Morris to be successful.
Jim Morris, who was originally a first-round pick of the Brewers in 1983, had 4 arm surgeries and made it as high as Class A ball, and that was it. His final year, 1987. Here it is, 1999. After about 10 years as a high school baseball coach, most recently Reagan County out in West Texas. Got a tryout with the Devil Rays in June. And here he is pitching in the big leagues in September. A swing and a strike one, his first major league pitch.
95 miles an hour.
There it is for you.
So anyone that doesn't believe it, there it is on the radar gun.
He appeared in 18 games for AAA Durham, a 3-1 record. High earned run average at 548. And he gets ahead of Clayton 0-2.
As I said earlier, I didn't believe it, but I do now. It is not a mirage. He's got a good arm, boy.
A tryout in June in his hometown of Brownwood. And fouled off by Clayton.
95, 95, 96.
I hope his high school kids out in Reagan County are watching.
Well, what about those kids? They had to hit off this all season long in batting practice. They must never hit the ball into fair territory. If they did, there's some good hitters on that club.
They made the playoffs last spring. That was a challenge that he presented to them. He went around. It's a strikeout for Jim Morris. Morris, in his major league debut, gets the strikeout. We go to the ninth inning. Rangers lead it 6-1.
Boy, the Rays put him into position to succeed, but there's a lot about this that I really enjoy. Number one, I think it's really important for a broadcaster to mention the scout who signed the player. Anytime a player makes their major league debut, I can look around the clubhouse and I can talk to our coaches. And the coaches who've worked with a player to help them make it, they feel so proud. All the players who know that guy feel proud. Everybody's watching. It's a success for the organizational system. It's a success for the organization. It doesn't matter if you're a first rounder. Everyone's rooting on the first rounder. Everyone's rooting on the undrafted free agent. So it's such a thrill to be able to laud the scouts, the organization, and then here we go. So I really appreciated hey, let's tell the story from both sides, from the organizational, the development, the scouting side, and then let's also laud the personal side here.
And let's also log the high school, the name of the high school, and the team, and what his players must be thinking, and what it was like for them to take batting practice against him this past year. I think there's so many elements of joy that are here. I think this is the ultimate of the broadcasters have done their homework, right? They've whether they got the information on their own or from reading it from the press notes, or whether it's reading from the newspaper clippings. I mean, this was a big story from the time that he got signed until the time that he was in the minor leagues and the time that he then got called up. All of this was a big story. And I think they did a really good job of giving us the bullet points without overwhelming us with information, right? At one point, they said 4 arm surgeries. He topped out at this level. That's all we needed at that point. We could have said this injury, this injury, this injury, this injury, these teams, and that's too much information for our brains. Just enough.
So I disagree a little bit. I think by the end, okay, now it's 0-2. Stop with the backstory and call the next pitch, because the story was what has brought him to this point. And now the story is he about to get Rolls Royce? And you can hear with the broadcasters, especially on color, that there's that show me aspect to it. Okay, let's see what he's got. All right, he's working 95. I see that he's got a good arm. So that's where I go. At the very end, you can just sit back. You can let the moment breathe, and you can see, how does this finish?
How do you feel, Jesse, about using the phrase, who wrote this script? Or this is the type of thing they're going to make a movie out of. What are your thoughts about using something like that?
I don't like it, unfortunately. I understand why people use it. I think it diminishes real life. And I think that real life is sometimes better than what happens in cinema, with all due respect to Dennis Quaid. But also real life is rockier than cinema. And it stops you from telling a person's story in 360 degrees. Everything that is told in the movie The Rookie, it's not all true, right? Some of it gets all Hollywooded up. And I think it's important to actually make people out to be people. And baseball is hard. And Royce Clayton is on the other side. And from this, great, but the story isn't over. So, yeah, I resist it. How do you feel?
You just made a really good argument, but I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be kind of vain here and say that I would love it at some point.
Yeah.
If I use the phrase, this is the type of story that ends up in a movie, And then years later, I go to the movie theater and hear my voice as a movie gets made about this guy.
Okay, good point.
Or maybe there's just some screenwriter in Los Angeles who's watching this game and he goes, oh, yeah, maybe I should write a movie about this because the announcer just said something.
It's so funny. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit dark here. When a disaster happens, there have been people quoted afterwards saying it felt like I was in a movie. And it's like, well, hold on. The movie is based on real life, or there are documentaries and such. The reason why you think you're watching a movie is because you've watched disasters just on screen. We have watched great stories told on screen that happen in real life first, and then that get translated to the screen, and it becomes this loop. And I don't want the real to become something that feels unreal. I actually think that it's better when it feels real.
For our next memorable debut, this one is very near and dear to my heart because it's Wynton Bernard. If you were to ask me who's your favorite Isotope in 11 years of broadcasting, no doubt about it, it's Wynton Bernard. Over 10 years in the minor leagues, and he finally gets his shot in the major leagues. And the incredibly cool thing about it was that the way that he was told, the manager, Warren Schaefer, tells the entire clubhouse. Everyone in the clubhouse goes nuts. He's trying to FaceTime his mom, and two of his teammates film him FaceTiming his mom. His mom is struggling to get the technology right. You can hear his teammates saying, like, no, you have to wait. She has to see you. She has to see you. And then he calls. He tells her. She starts crying. He starts crying. It's this incredibly emotional, powerful thing. Now he's in the major leagues. He's making his debut. It just so happened, Jesse, that the Isotopes had a rain delay. And so I'm on the air describing how, okay, tonight's game is not going to begin. And then I look up on the video board and I realize that Wynton is up there about to have his first at bat with the Rockies. And all of a sudden, I then start to hear like this echo. And I'm like, sounds like there's an echo. And then I look over to my left into the control room, and they're basically trying to tell me, we are picking up you. Do play-by-play of Wynton's first at bat for us at the ballpark. So I'm watching the video board of Wynton Bernard's first at bat. I'm doing play-by-play from Albuquerque. We have it at Isotopes Park. And as it turned out, he did not get a hit, but that was super fun. And then later on in the night, the Isotopes game begins. And now we're going to get to later in the game of Wynton Bernard's first major league game.
Here's the 2-1. Tap toward third, and Bernard is... Oh, I thought he beat him.
Yeah, they're going to check
Either way, Hilliard's at third. The crowd, for several reasons, is arguing for Buddy vociferously.
Even the guys on the bench are saying, hey, grab that baseball and also check this one.
And Brian Jones is studying it, and we'll find out if they're going to take a look.
Colorado is challenging the out call at first base.
Yeah, and you know what? This won't take long in New York. You're going to see the first major league hit for Wynton. Yeah. Oh, man, by major league standards, not even close. So congratulations to Wynton Bernard.
Everybody on the bench, too. He's safe.
The crowd's now reacting because they just put it up on Rockies Vision. And there's 35,000 umpires saying, what are you talking about?
What's taking so long?
After review, the call on the field is overturned. The runner is safe. Colorado retains their challenge.
That's one of the happiest reviews in the history of Coors Field. And now Wynton's going to get that baseball. He's still smiling ear to ear. And you know what? He got Sam Hilliard to third in the process. Gotta love it. Beautiful.
We're sitting up here watching, cheering just as hard as his family, too.
Here's their reaction. Brian Servant Now, another aspect, let's get back to baseball here, and another aspect of Wynton Bernard's tool chest as the ball is being authenticated is Wynton Bernard runs really, really well.
You got a fast runner at third and Sam Hilliard, too. You got a lot of action possible.
He takes off, and no throw, and Wynton Bernard in his first Major League game has his first Major League hit and his first Major League stolen base.
Good call, Drew. I like it because of the speed you have at third as a catcher who's making his first start tonight behind the plate. And Cooper Hummel, he's like, no, I'm not going to throw down there. If I throw, then Sam might come home with the run that puts the Rockies ahead.
Serving gets it in play. And Sam Hilliard, it's an interesting read because as soon as you see Marte, Huey, I'll put you back on third base, having to move. The way Sam runs, thought he may make the break for the plate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he got a good read on it. With the infield in, so you're not going to go on the ground. But right there, as soon as you see him take 3 or 4 steps to his left and have to dive for it, he doesn't go. But also smart by Wynton out at second base not to run him off the bag.
And I want to factor in something else. In watching that replay, Huey, again, trying to look from Sam's standpoint, he may have felt like Seth Beer was going to cut that ball off. So 1 out, second and third in a 3-3 game. Blackman will face the left-hander, the all-star Joe Schley with no one out. Brian Servant grounded out. So now Joe Mantiply, the all-star for Arizona, has been summoned. Charlie's at the plate. Career 300-plus average left on left. It's the 49th appearance for Mantiply, a guy who never walks anybody.
Charlie 1 for 4 lifetime against Joe.
Slicing base hit left field. 1 runner scored. And Bernard gets a stop sign from Stu Cole. So the Rockies take the 4-3 lead as Blackman goes super aggressive against Mantiply. And it's first and third with 1 out.
Well, I like the aggressiveness from Charlie. Now 2 for 5 lifetime against Joe. It's a cutter away from an inside-out swing. That pitch was in a good location to be able to do this. Hard-charging left fielder and Jake McCarthy. So Sam's going to score. Wynn got a good breakout at second base, but with Jose Iglesias, who's 2 for 3 lifetime against Mantiply, Stu held him up. Now first and third, just 1 out.
Mantiply checks on Charlie. Jose Iglesias, he has some interesting splits. And I'm not talking about the home road splits. The road average is near the top of the food chain. The home averages come way up. This is clubbed to center field, plenty deep enough to get Bernard home. Thomas makes the catch. Bernard will stride home. His first major league run makes it 5-3 Colorado, and the crowd erupts again.
Just a little bit of everything in that inning from Wynton. Gets the leg infield single, steals second, gets to third, and then tags up and scores his first major league run.
Blew that dugout.
Love it.
To San Diego Navy.
You need to talk because I'm going to start crying again.
Yeah, I would have loved to hear your play-by-play over all of this too. Joe Mantiply, the man on the mound, as Wynton scored, and Wynton were teammates in 2014 with the West Michigan Whitecaps in the Detroit Tigers organization. And that year, Wynton was the Midwest League most valuable player. This is a very different circumstance from what we saw at the very start of the show with JPR and Sebia. This is not a first pitch home run to make that Major League splash debut. The tour around the bases with the crowd and his family cheering him on the entire way. And it felt to me like the crowd was becoming his extended family, wanting it overturned at first base. And then it was. And now he's stealing second. And now he's scoring an important insurance run. And everybody loves Wynton Bernard. And this is in the ballpark in Colorado. This is across every organization. This is in Albuquerque with you. This is everyone who's ever met him. I got to call his games in 2014. This was wonderful.
This is A+. Directing, cinematography, producing, graphics. That's Drew Goodman doing play-by-play. You might have heard the word Huey. That's Jeff Hewson who's doing the analysis. I mean, this is just A+ all around. And to me, this is why debuts are so special, right? The Rockies were not going to the playoffs that year. They were not going close. But Coors Field's electric that night. People saw the video of Wynton and his mom, and they read about him. They exchanged stories in the ballpark, and you put it beautifully. They were all willing him around the bases.
I'm going to go back into why I don't like when something feels scripted. This means more because Wynton is a real person. This means more because you see his parents and you see what it means to them. This means more because you see what it means to everybody else. Because you see him as a person, this means more, and you understand the humanity behind all of this.
You think about the struggle of 11 years to get to the major leagues. There was a point where, I mean, he was a 35th round draft pick. There was a point where he had been released. Yeah, he was the MVP of the Midwest League. He was also released. He showed up at a tryout camp in order to get signed. Continued to just play. Went to independent ball when minor league baseball was shut down in 2020, had to grind his way through indie ball to get back to affiliated baseball. It was his second year with the Isotopes. He was a very average player his first year, didn't get a whole lot of playing time, only got playing time his second year because of injuries, and then just ran with the opportunity. And so his struggle just to get to the major leagues, and then it's almost fitting that, no, he's called out. No, wait, there's a review, right?
There's that second chance.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, just give the man a chance. Just have a look. Give it another look and see. For us in broadcasting, how many years is our prime as we are struggling to try to make it to the major leagues? But for a ball player, if you're Jim Morris and you're 35, the dream is done. And then your high school players are saying, the dream's not done. It's not over yet. You need to try this. For how many Wynton Bernards are there out there who day after day are going through their paces and trying to keep that dream alive, even though the clock is ticking on their baseball prime years? 35 in any other occupation, right? Except, let's say, an Olympic athlete in certain areas, gymnast, or I don't know, chess grandmaster. 35 is great. 35 is a top point in your life. And for a baseball player, you see that clock ticking. And so here's Wynton. Wynton born in 1990. So right now he's 33 years old as we're recording this and still playing great ball. And yet for every single baseball player, they see that clock ticking on their time to play baseball.
There's so many things about that 7 minutes of video that we watched that just makes me excited, emotional. Then at the end, I love how Drew and Jeff, they said, just look at that. Just look at those reactions. In the dugout, in the stands, his mom, his brothers, his teammates, his smile. It's like, just look at that. So well done.
Well, that's where Bob Costas, right? Trying to find words for the moment. And sometimes as a broadcaster, you need to know when not to find a word for the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Super fun. I love this episode. I love debuts.
Debuts are great. Whether you're 19 and you're Doc Gooden, whether you're in your 30s, do you mind if we watch Drew Maggi? Do we have time?
Yes, of course we have time. Let's
watch
Drew Maggi, especially because one of our favorites is on the call of it.
Introducing Drew Maggi.
Number 39, Drew Maggi will pinch hit for Andrew McCutcheon, making his Major League debut.
What a warm and classy greeting.
I love this game. Jeff Nelson, home plate umpire, stepping out, giving him a moment.
Cranks one.
Let it go foul.
He's waited his whole life for this. You bet he's swinging. The oldest player to make his major league debut, a position player. Jeff Nelson had to call a strike on him because he wasn't ready to hit with 8 on the clock. And now it's 0-2. Drafted by the Pirates in 2010. In the 15th round, he came up with Garrett Cole and Jamison Tyone, just to give you an idea. Almost 4,500 plate appearances in the minor leagues before number 1 tonight. Maggi strikes out. He's a big leaguer forever.
Drew Maggi, by the way, career Major League stats, 2 for 6 as of time of recording, single and double. 1,154 games in the minor leagues before that Major League debut. And it slows everything down. It makes every pitch matter. And Joe Block gives it that moment, that introducing Drew Maggi, that telling that story. But at the same time, we are hanging on every pitch.
If you didn't know better, you would think that the PA announcer and the DJ were in sync with Joe Block as he says, introducing Drew Maggi.
Yes.
Here comes the music. Here comes the PA announcer. And I think that Joe does a fabulous job of laying out, giving us these bullet points, understanding the moment, even letting us know that the home plate umpire stepped out and give him a few more moments, which is fabulous. But then has to call
a pitch clock strike on him.
Yes, but then has to do that. And even at the end, he strikes out, but he's a major leaguer.
Yes. Yeah, because that's the real meaning of this.
Mm-hmm.
Which we can get back to the very start. That's the meaning of all of this. That's the meaning of every single guy that you've seen in uniform, is that means something to be a major leaguer. And then what do you do with it and how do we describe it? But how do we describe that initial entrance into this is so important. How do we make that introduction? How do we get to know the player and then help the player get to know everyone who cares about that? At the same time, there are the people like you who are sitting back and you know Wynton Bernard better than Drew Goodman. So here's Drew describing Wynton as you're sitting back and caring so much about everything that happens. There's his mom and dad and everything else that comes from it. So I'm fascinated by that dichotomy. The people who are processing this. How many Pittsburgh Pirates fans had never heard of Drew Maggi and then they heard that story and now they care? And how many people watching this know Drew intimately and care? And I love that everyone comes together to root him on together. And that extends into the broadcast booth.
And that's why I like the variety that we've used for these, because there's some guys like it's in the cards. It was in the cards for Doc Gooden and Stephen Strasburg. They were going to make their debuts. It's Wynn, and the place is going to be sold out for Strasburg. And then for others, it's maybe this is the only game that he's ever going to play. Or he's only going to get a few opportunities, and this is one, and it matters. Or it's just the perseverance is just something that really inspires all of us. And that's what makes it special.
This was special to talk all of this over with you.
Yeah. For Jesse Goldberg-Strassler of the Lansing Lugnuts, I'm Josh Suchon for the Albuquerque Isotopes. Always enjoy your debut, no matter what it is. This is Crafting the Call.